to convene the Single Family Design Board meeting for September 25th, 2023. If we could please have a roll call.
Great, thank you. Chair Kalas,
Yes?
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Gerfeidi,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll start with item A, which is, this is a moment of public comment or a space for public comment. So anybody who is online or in the gallery that would like to speak to an item that is under the purview of this board, but that is not specifically related to an agendized item for today, this is your opportunity to speak to the board if you would care to do so. Ms. Johnson, if you could please.
All right, thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I don't have any speaker slips for general public comment. Just as a reminder, if you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I don't see anyone moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment.
Ms. Johnson, someone in the galleries raised their hand.
I do have something to speak for general comment that's also in relation to what
So you're going to speak specifically
for
the project that you're to?
I think something that the board should know.
Yeah, so you'll speak, so we'll do open a public comment on that item as well, and you'll speak during.
This doesn't have to do with.
So if you have a broader issue that you would like to discuss without correlating it to an item that is on today's agenda, now would be the time to do that. But if you're going to tie it to the agendized item, I would ask that you hold your comment until that item. Okay,
Okay,
go ahead, Ms. Johnson.
So I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment then at this time. If you wish to make a comment on Zoom, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any written correspondence, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you. So we'll close public comment, general public comment, and we will move on to approval of meeting minutes. So we will start by reviewing the meeting minutes from the full board meeting of September 11th. First item on the agenda was 1932 Cleveland Avenue. Motion was made to continue that project indefinitely, back to the full board. That was the only item. That's right, we only had one item last time. Did anybody have any comments or corrections? Okay. Would somebody like to make a motion for approval?
Sure. I will move to approve the September 11th minutes.
Second.
If we could take a roll call, please.
Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Gerfeidi,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis.
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Move on to the meeting minutes from consent calendar of September 18th, 2023. Ms. Lewis, it appears that you are present for this consent calendar. Have you reviewed these minutes? Okay, do you have any corrections or comments? Okay. I will then make a motion for approval of the minutes for consent calendar September 18th of 2023. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And if we could take roll call?
Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Gerfeidi,
Abstain.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And if Ms. Gerfeidi could state for the record her reason for abstention?
Conflict of interest for item D.
Thank you. Okay, and we will move on to the consent calendar from earlier today, September 25th. And I believe that Ms. Gerfeidi presided over that meeting. Do you have you reviewed the meeting minutes?
I've reviewed the meeting minutes. I don't have any corrections. Just for the board's notes, it was 2 items up for final approval to receive substantial conformance to the PDAs they received, and both were approved.
Okay, great. So I will make a motion that the meeting minutes for September 25th, 2023 consent calendar be approved as drafted. If we could have a second?
Second?
And a roll call, please.
Chair Kalas,
Yes?
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis.
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to item D, which is announcements, requests by applicants for continuance and withdrawals, future agenda items, and appeals. Do we have any announcements from staff?
Yes, Chair Claus, board members, just another reminder, the appeal for 1860 Overlook Lane will be held on Thursday, October 6th at the Planning Commission. And thanks to Chair Claus, she's volunteered to attend on behalf of the board. It sounds like it's scheduled after the preliminary matters, so staff can be in touch with you as far as scheduling goes.
Thank you.
And then the Land Development Team Oversight Subcommittee meeting will be Thursday, October 26th at 2:30. Project Planner Ted Hamilton Roll and the Design Review Supervisor Ellen Kokinda will be providing an update on the SFDB process improvements. The meeting's recorded. It can be found online. Post that meeting, they will provide an update to the SFDB as well. That's it.
Do we anticipate that there will be recommendations made at the October 26th meeting, or just an update on the process?
I'd have to check with those planners as I'm not involved on the day-to-day with that, but we can get back to you.
Yeah, if that could be done, and if you could report back to the full board at our next full board meeting?
Sure.
That would be most appreciated.
Will do.
Do we have any requests by applicants for continuances or withdrawals from today's meeting? I think that's a no. Any announcements from the board? No.
Can we get a time for that, 10:06?
Ms. Garson was just explaining that it will be after the regularly scheduled items at Planning Commission, and so that they will inform us when it gets closer to the date of the actual time of the event. Okay, I just want to remind everybody in the room that this is a relatively formal hearing, and so I've noticed that some of us, myself included, have been skipping back to informalities and first names, and if we can keep this on a last name formal basis, it would be most appreciated. With that being said, we will move on to item 1, which is 3635 Santa Maria Lane. Oh, we didn't have any subcommittee reports, is that correct, or did we?
None on staff's behalf, and I believe the subcommittee that you all were involved in has since terminated.
Yes, correct. Thank you. Okay, so back to the regular scheduled agenda. Item 1, 3635 Santa Maria Lane. This is a proposal, this project is here for project design approval. It is a proposal to demolish the existing 1,124 square foot single-story, single-unit residence and construct a new 2,013 square foot single-story, single-unit residence and a new 424 square foot attached garage. The existing and permitted 375 square foot accessory dwelling unit will remain and is not under this board's review or purview. The proposed total of 2,812 square feet of development on a 9,524 square foot lot is 79% of the maximum required floor lot area ratio. Project design approval is requested. Neighborhood preservation findings are required. The project was last reviewed on April 24th of this year. If you would please introduce yourselves for the record, make sure your microphone is on, and
I am Brad Hodges. This is my wife, Julie, and we are the owners.
thank you. So we typically ask that you run us through the meeting minutes from the prior meeting, and that you then walk us through your drawings and explain anything that has changed since the previous meeting, and/or how you have addressed the comments or concerns that the board had at the last meeting.
Okay, I haven't reviewed this sheet, but from memory, the last thing was, initially, our plate heights were very high. So the first time we came in, we were at 11 feet 6. Then the second time we came in, we were down to 10 foot 6. And after that, you wanted to see a profile of the front elevation compared to the two neighboring houses. And you made no decision on the plate's heights at that point. And there was another issue, I believe, regarding color of the stucco. So, what we have done in this iteration is we have dropped the plate heights to 9 foot 6 on the left and 10 feet on the right. We shifted the ridge line to match it up, line it up with the interior floor plan a little better. We've also, there was a comment, other than the massing of the plate heights, there was an issue just about the overall kind of large forehead, I think the comment was, of the original design. It was just sort of bulky and a lot in there. So we've changed the front quite a bit. We got rid of the clear story windows. We've just reduced the number of windows completely, basically on the front. There was, I think, 3 separate windows on the left in that bedroom. There's now really one window with a thick mullion. And we eliminated the windows over the door and over the window to the right of the door. We also, there was a lot of window changes, actually.
We eliminated also the projected.
Just to the applicant, sorry for interrupting. I didn't actually advise you on this, but please press on the base of the microphone to light it up green. and
Sometimes
speak.
they look lit up and they're not.
Okay. I was just gonna say we also removed the projection wall that was at the front.
Yeah, there was
of
an
the house.
interior
So that's just
architectural.
less mass is what we were going for.
And then we also cleaned up the windows on both west and east projections. There was just, I think we removed one window and lined them up a little bit better on the east elevation. And on the west elevation, there was 5 thin windows all right next to each other. In the initial design, we changed it to those 2 windows that you see now. That other window is that's the window on the across the front. That's the window that's right.
It's the return of your front entry.
Yeah, just up to the left of the entry. That's the window over on this side right here. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically, oh, and then the projections. So here's how it projects out in the neighborhood. The 2 neighbors on each side are 412 roof pitches. Our roof pitch is 312. So our plate heights are a little higher, but it's sort of offset a bit by the lower pitch. So now I can't read it. She may have put in there estimated what the crest is, or the peak of the roof. But it's within a foot, I think, of either house on the right, maybe a foot and a half. I can't really read it from here.
Is it possible to zoom in? Up at the top, there's a,
Let's see, that's 15.5. Our ridge line is 15.5. And the neighbors, she's got it 13.7. no, 12, 13 feet. So we're about,
And it's based on the assumed 8 feet ceiling or plate height for the
we just
neighbors.
assumed that the plate height was 8 feet on those houses.
Okay.
So, and now some other differences, I don't know if it matters, but we did do one other little thing, which was we knocked a notch out of the back corner of this garage to accommodate the AC condenser and kept it 6 feet back, which gave us our acoustical noise.
Yeah. To meet the decibel levels there at
to
the
get
property
decibel
line.
level, Right. So that 6 foot, and we chose a unit, and that 6 foot just put us right at the, whatever it was, I think 53 or 52.
Okay.
Other than that, that's about the only changes.
We changed the stucco color.
Oh, yeah. And here's we put the stucco color in there, but it doesn't present like this, so that this is the more accurate. I call it like a dirty oatmeal. The other one was
Or it's more white.
well, it was called Dove Gray, but it was a very white with a hint of blue, I think. Maybe blue gray.
And what is this color, do you know? Do you know what this color name
is-
is, or is it documented in the drawings?
It's documented in the drawings. It's La Habra Aspen, X23 Aspen. But that's called out in right down here.
Plan,
Okay.
And I believe that's it. Other than that, we're pretty much, we did a lot of work on the stormwater management. I don't know if you guys care all that much about that.
Is there any developed information related to landscape or exterior lighting that we should know about? I don't know that we had seen a landscape plan previously, I don't recall.
Yeah, it's in there. That's
So
it.
here's the land, this is page 1 of the landscape. These are all permeable pavers in the front and the driveway area. In fact, all of the square pavers from the back of the garage, basically from here to here is all 12 inches of gravel for drainage and that's actually part of one of the SMPs. One of the BMPs for the stormwater management plan. This is one drainage area for a small section of roof. Back here is a cistern, a 305-gallon cistern, which is providing us this collection for the ADU, the existing ADU. And then we have retention ponds roughly here and here. I don't think she's got them called out.
Yeah, it's called on one of the pages. I think that, I don't know which direction. But
Well,
There.
this right here is one of the BMPs, that's a retention pond. And then up in this corner up here is a retention pond. They're not huge. We didn't have, all we had to do was drain these roof sections. This entire half of the roof comes through this one. The front 2/3 of this roof come through this one. The rest drains out under to the permeable pavers back here and along the driveway. The driveway is actually one very large BMP for the front part of the roof. So the landscape is all drought tolerant. That's all gravel or various permeable paving product. I don't know what it was. I forget the name of it. It's some sort of permeable.
Paver.
Grancrete or something like that.
Yeah.
Is it on the other page?
It's on there, yeah.
Yeah, it's on. Gina called it out on there, one of those pages.
There we go.
Yep. I can't read it, but looks like there's a note there on the right, maybe.
Granite Creek, there you go. Granite Creek, permeable paving. So anything that's not that permeable paver is gravel. There was one large mature tree in the front that stays. There were 3 fruit trees, a plum, a peach,
There's 2 peaches and a plum.
yeah, 2 peaches and a plum tree. Those are gone. They weren't very healthy to begin with. And there's also a large magnolia in the back. There was a large magnolia right about here. That, it's not a very, you can see the slope back here. This is a fairly large slope. And it's covered with one very large, very healthy native oak. And it shades a lot, it throws a lot of shade under this backyard. And that poor magnolia just never did very well. It's kind of sparsely limbed and doesn't look like a typical magnolia at all. So that comes out. There's just a simple seating area in the back. This is all that granitecrete again.
Is there any lighting proposed in the exterior landscape?
No, not at this time.
Not at this time. We have, I mean, there's going to be a light in the front somewhere, but we haven't, we just haven't got, that's going to come in our electrical plan. But we haven't spec'd anything out. We haven't placed it, but it's, I'm guessing, I mean, I really don't know where it's going to be. Be somewhere in the front. There will be at least one light, maybe 2 lights to balance out on one side or the other of this front pseudo fireplace projection thing.
We were told that we can identify those in building, so I don't know.
Okay.
And then there is going to probably be some uplighting up back here on this slope. There'll probably be a couple of uplights to shoot up the limbs and the branches of this oak tree, for sure. Maybe this one, and maybe this one, but more than likely just this tree will have maybe 3 or 4 or 5 uplights, probably low voltage,
Yeah.
very subtle, just a gentle washing of light up into the limbs of this.
Okay, you have about 1.5 minutes left. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I think, I don't have anything to.
I can't think of anything that's, I'm sure there's something we changed and I just don't remember it. It's been a while since we've been in here.
You have about 1 minute that you can retain in the event that there's something that comes up that you'd like to share with us.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so we're done.
great. Okay, so at this time, we would like to turn to public comment for this item. If there is anybody here that would like to speak to item 1 at 3635 Santa Maria Lane, now is the time at which they could do so. And I'll ask Ms. Johnson to man that or to woman that process, please.
All right, thank you, Chair Kalas. I'll start with in-person public comment. So at this time, I haven't received any speaker slips for this item, but just as a reminder, if you do wish to speak in person, you can fill out a speaker slip by the back door. I don't see anyone moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I don't see any hands raised on Zoom, and we also did not receive any written correspondence for this item, so I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you very much. Okay, so at this time, it would be time for questions from the board. Would anybody care to start that process? Does anybody have any questions?
I do. I don't know if anybody else does, but I have.
I actually have a question. You were here for the last meeting, but not the first one on this item, is that right?
Yeah,
I think
not
you
the first
abstained
one.
last time, okay, but you were here for the last,
And I
okay.
reviewed it and.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Ms. Sherry.
I was able to, I was actually able to ask questions but not comment, but now I can
Yes.
comment.
Yes.
And I can still ask questions.
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, can you zoom in on the front elevation, not on the page that had the adjacent neighbors' profiles, but the
Raw.
the elevation sheet? Just zoom in, make it bigger on the screen, because I had a question about the plate heights. One was, you said on the east was 10 feet, and then on the west was 9.6. So I was just, or maybe it was reversed, but I was just wondering why, it looked like the drawing just showed them the same. So I was just wondering if you could zoom in on that and I could see why they were different.
They're different because we shifted the
It's
center
not,
line.
the
original-
elevation actually was the page I wanted you to find.
But it has to do with keeping the original footprint of the house and where the beam goes.
So it had to do with the addition being a different plate height and then the existing finished floor being the same plate height that it is now.
The footprint of the house, we kept the footprint of the house. So
Mm-hmm.
we're building on the footprint of the house, and that's where the beam is.
But the reason that they are different,
Actually, can you zoom in on that elevation? Because it's hard to read the numbers. That's what I wanted to see.
Yeah. it's
That's good.
roof, yeah.
That's good. So 10 feet on the
On the west,
west and,
9.6 on the east.
because
I think she's got them, she doesn't call them out too well.
if you look at the dashed line that indicates the finished floor, it's the same going all the way through the house.
Yeah,
And so,
so it's the fact that the ridge line is off-center.
oh, is that why?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the ridge
Right,
line was
okay.
shifted to the right to line up better with the interior floor plan.
Okay.
And what that did was it just brought up the right side as the ridge line shifted to the right.
Okay.
I think the old ridge line was roughly at the edge of the door.
And then the other question I had was, just out of curiosity, I was wondering why you raised the header on the window to the right of the front door.
It just looked a little weak when it was lined up. It was a little underwhelming, the front elevation. You know, we were trying to tone it down, and that toned it down too much.
Okay.
So, and when we looked at the interior, we've done some interior modeling, and it just was a better look.
Okay.
It made this part of the house a little more dramatic for us.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions?
I have some questions.
Okay,
Hi,
Ms.
thank
Anderson.
you for coming back. I reviewed where we were at the last couple of times, and I think there was a comment on the roof lines, and our biggest challenge is neighborhood compatibility with your project, which I believe is mid-century modern is what you're going for, correct? Okay, right. So, and then we're in an existing single-story ranch neighborhood. Your immediate neighborhood is single-story with a lot of hip roof. So for us, our challenge is finding that this project is compatible with the existing neighborhood and how the character changes. So we did ask for you to look at different roof slopes, potential hips or roof lines. Were there any further studies on the roof lines from the previous submittals?
No.
Well, I mean, we changed it drastically, if you might
The first-
recall,
I don't
from
know
the
if you remember
first.
The first one.
Yeah, I
That
mean, the
was
first
really
was
wild.
more of the flat roof with the pitch in the middle. So we completely changed that to accommodate, to be more compatible with the neighborhood. So we feel that's very compatible.
But there were comments, the first time we came in, the roof design was, I call it the witch hat look. It was just and flat roofs.
It was more modern than,
Yeah, it didn't go over well. We knew, I mean, we did change, that's when we went to, just a straight, shallow slope
I have
roof.
one more question, Chair Claus. Are the ceilings vaulted?
For the most part, except down the center.
we have drop ceilings down the center and in the bathrooms and the laundry room.
But
the kitchen,
the rooms on the
living
right and
rooms,
the left of
both
the
the
house of the
bedrooms.
gable are vaulted ceilings? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
So then, did you look at any colored renderings or three-dimensional perspectives? I mean, because color can really help us to visualize how it fits in as well and provide compatibility with, neutral tones or monochromatic or, and how that blends with your adjacent neighbors.
We actually have been working with 3D renderings. We're currently just focused on the interiors, looking at interior elevations. But we actually have, you can just step back, and it's been modeled out. It's not extensive work has not been done on matching the finishes. It's just been quickly picking stuff out of libraries, saying, that's close to what we're thinking of, and popping it in. But we haven't, for example, gone and tried to find an exact computer modeling of this color, for example. We just picked something that looked close. Same with the fireplace or the accent piece, whatever you want to call that. That's modeled right now as just like a brick, but it doesn't model exactly what it's going to look like. We can do that. We can.
You want us to have a 3D drawing with colors? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, asking if you've studied that yet, because that can really help us to, determine how that fits in with the neighborhood colors, create compatibility as well, so.
Yeah, we're pretty close. It wouldn't take much to
We would
nail everything down, maybe, get a high-quality scan of this and put it into the system to make that color work. The fascias, the window trim, that's all going to be just standard, the black color that, these are, I forgot who was doing our windows, Fleetwood. So the Fleetwood black color is the color of the window trim. We're going to match that to the fascia pieces. Those fascia pieces are metal. And then the stucco color, but we could have a 3D rendering. I don't know if you'd be able to spin it, but we can probably snapshot a couple of our scenes of it just to see what it looks like from a few angles maybe. But yeah, we can do that.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just asking, and the Coronado, the ledge stone is just on the front fireplace, is a manufactured or a natural?
That's,
Ledge
right now,
stone.
that's Coronado stone. That's a manufactured, it's pretty common. You see it a lot in, and actually, we've got a designer that really would like to upgrade that. But we decided we'd cross that bridge in, maybe in building. But if we have to, we could sit down and rethink exactly what we want there. Because she wants the same material on the inside as the outside, and that kind of rules out the Coronado stone. Coronado stone really is, it's an exterior product. It really wouldn't look good on the inside of a house.
Oh.
Although people do it, but I don't think it looks.
But I mean, we don't have any definite decisions on that yet. So as far as we know, it's what we have now. So we didn't change it because we really don't have a decision of what goes on, how the actual decoration or interior designing will be inside. We just have an idea, and we're just working on the inside. But we have the major stuff, which is like the drop ceilings, where the drop ceilings will go. Yeah. But as far as tiles for the inside,
But it's
The
gonna-
interior, we don't have all that.
Interior's really not our purview, so we don't
Right.
even need to discuss interior with you, just to keep this on track.
Oh, good.
I think the question was really whether it was just a natural stone or a manufactured stone on the exterior.
It's looking like it is going to be, and again, this also gets down to pricing. One of the motivations for knocking out some windows was that Fleetwood windows are expensive. So budget allowing, we want to upgrade it probably to a natural product. It will be a ledger type, it'll be a ledger style stone, but there are some natural products, but there's also some still tile-like products that kind of simulate the ledger look, but it's still more of a flat tile. We've seen stuff like that. But
But the color is not going to be drastically different. We're trying to
Colors-
stay with the, the more earthy tone,
Okay.
yeah.
I think we can move on to the next question.
The front encroaches in the front setback, I'm sorry, I believe, and I just wanted to clarify that. The front roof line for a certain portion, does that encroach in the front 20-foot setback, or am I incorrect?
it shouldn't. Let's see, I'm trying to think where the setbacks are drawn. I think they're drawn way up top somewhere.
It's typically shown on the site plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it on the first floor plan. It looks like it's covers over the porch, but not the roof line,
Okay. So the flat work.
right?
Oh, yeah, you can see it there. I believe this is a line, right?
It's right at the corner of the residence.
The roof line comes forward of the 20-foot setback.
Yeah.
It does, yeah. Okay, so, I mean, we don't have that noted anywhere, but, okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I know there was a comment, or you discussed comments of the varying ridge lines, or I guess there's not a difference. But from my recollection, the neighbor on the west side, I believe, does have a similar ridge line. So if you could just pull that up, I just want to get clarity to see if there are patterns, similar patterns of development.
That overhead, that aerial view might be helpful to start with, and then we could go to these elevation photos. It was the one prior, it showed it was an aerial view that looked like it showed 3 houses, including yours. You just scanned through it a
It's on page 16.
brief second ago.
Page 16. I don't see page number.
Oh, right now you're on 18 of 21.
There you go. So the home to the left looks like it has gable roofs, and the one to the right appears to have hipped roofs, and the subject parcel appears to have hipped roofs currently. Does that answer your, is that what you were looking for? Do you want to see
Yeah,
the
I think
front
I'm more
elevations
concerned
also?
from the front, so in more of the appearance, but I think just seeing
Perhaps you
it
could go
from
to
here,
their neighborhood photos then.
it's okay, it answered my question.
Did you guys study at all the fireplace chimney coming past the roof line, or right now it just goes to
Oh,
the
it's
other
not-
side?
Well, we don't have a real chimney. It's not a real chimney.
Yes, it's just it's not going to be a functioning chimney. It's just one of those,
It's just a electric.
yeah.
It's not a real chimney.
Okay, could we see the front photos, the photos of the the context photos that you have, please?
I can't believe they're above us.
Those were the ones that you were going to a second ago, and I derailed you and moved you onto the sheet, I'm sorry.
I think if you scroll down to page 18,
Oh,
There we go.
there.
Could you zoom in on those I'm assuming, okay, yeah, I'm more interested in the neighboring.
There we go.
If you close the comment bar on the right, if you close that, it'll give it, that's great, thank you. And then could you point out which two are your flanking neighbors, please?
This is the.
That's the east side.
neighbor.
Okay,
This is the west neighbor.
And the east neighbor, they're working on the landscaping, so they cleared out a lot of the front. And they said that they're going to really clean it up, so more of the house will show.
okay. And the colors of those homes are, from what I'm seeing, it looks like the easterly neighbor's maybe a light gray, and the westerly
Yeah,
neighbor,
There's a touch of green in that,
okay,
and then the east neighbor.
Yeah, I think it's more like a light beige,
okay.
yeah. It's
And
not
then the
gray at
neighbor
all.
on the right, I don't remember what. Let's see if we can zoom in a little.
Well, it looks like it might be a gray.
It's like a taupe color.
Almost like black shutters and, okay. Okay. That was the only significant
let's see,
question
the
that I
rest
have. Except you did note that there used to be a large magnolia tree that was suffering in the back, and that's been removed.
Well, no,
We're going to.
we're gonna apply to get it removed.
Right.
Okay, and so is that illustrated on the landscape plan? Because when I saw it, I didn't see anything indicating the removal of a tree, but maybe I wasn't looking at the right sheet.
I think it's not indicated until you get to the site plan, earlier on.
It's noted on the cover sheet, 18-inch magnolia to be removed.
But it's not indicated on the landscape plans?
No, because we're assuming it's removed for the new landscape.
So you don't have a landscape demolition plan, just a proposed plan?
Right, yeah. This is the location of the magnolia.
And a question for staff, so if that's an 18-inch diameter magnolia, would that be required to go through a process for removal because of the size and nature of the tree?
Yeah, Chair Colossus, board members, because this tree is noted on a site plan, architectural or landscape plan, it can receive its necessary removal approval through this design review process. It doesn't need further removal or approval through the environmental analyst due to
Did it
its
say
species.
18-inch trunk like this? Is that what the notes say?
Yeah, it's notated on the cover sheet site plan.
Yeah.
Have you had an arborist look at that tree?
Well, we had an arborist come out to look at the oaks in the back. He briefly commented on the magnolia. He just said, that's kind of sickly. It's not like the typical magnolia he sees. But we didn't focus on it at that point.
Okay, but you don't have a report from him stating anything about the condition of the tree?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it was an aesthetic call. He said it's not going to die. It's not going to fall over. It's not a risk to anybody. He just said,
It's not
that's an
very
ugly
healthy
tree.
Okay. And then, did I hear you state correctly that the fascia would be metal?
Yeah, some sort of steel.
I don't
forgot
know
what
what
they call it.
exactly,
Yeah.
but yes,
The
it's
builder-
gonna be
that's the builder.
It's gonna be metal to match the window frames.
So
on the
you're
win-
looking at an anodized color, like a dark gunmetal black
It's like a
steel
flat,
fascia?
flat black,
Black, I think.
matted black. I don't know what the actual name is.
Does it look like your
think
image
it's-
C on page 14?
Yeah, it should be listed on there. It's called out on there.
Yeah, that's, yeah. So the soffits underneath are this cedar, what is it? Cedar planking, fire rated. It was like the only thing we could find that
It's
was
fire rated.
rated for soffits in Santa Barbara. It's a product with a funny name. What is it? Dolly Varden cedar plank. So the soffits around the perimeter of the house are that, and that's pretty much what it's going to look like, a black metal fabricated fascia piece.
Okay. And you've shown us what the manufactured stone would look like.
Yeah, this is the, right here. In fact, you know what, I just realized, we changed from the Coronado stone to this Artesia. Remember, that was a different product. So this is actually,
It's
when
the
I said
same-
Coronado stone,
It's the same company with this, I guess it's a different line, but it's.
oh, that's right,
It's
yeah, it's still
man-made.
Coronado stone, it's just a different, artisan ledge was the one. We changed it between the second trip here and this trip. to
Because
be
the
this-
first one, I think we were told that it was too dark. It was like black, charcoal, and you guys wanted more of an earthy tone. So we were trying to find, that.
Yeah, well, yeah,
But
yes, you're right.
the
first-
landscape will give a lot of earthy tones too.
So what's on the screen right now is representing what your current desire is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And you noted that lighting would be addressed in future iterations of the drawings.
Yes.
Okay, I think those are all of my questions. Does anybody else have any more questions? Okay, so we'll move on to comment period. Would anybody like to start?
I'll start. I think the improvements are helpful and more in alignment, bringing down the plate heights. I think the comparison, looking at the two neighbors, I get that it's a different roof structure. I think if you go down Santa Maria Lane a little bit more, there's a few more front-facing like this instead of seeing the hip of the roof. I think the adjustments to the windows are better and more in alignment with the neighborhood and starting to not stand out as much. It's definitely a different architectural style, but I think that that can be okay. And I think the cream color is a better solution than the stark white.
I'll go. I completely agree with Board Member Lewis. I went back and pulled up all the plans, and you've made so many adjustments to respond to our comments and to try to really hit our preservation, our neighborhood preservation findings and really stay in our guidelines. The color, the heights, all of the materials used, the style of the home. It's really, to me, clear that you are trying to make this more compatible with the neighborhood. It's also clear that you've been engaging with your neighbors. So for me, I know probably get different feedback here, but I think it's our job to find projects that are acceptable. And for me, I would be supportive of project design approval today.
Okay. Ms. Sherry, do you have any comments?
Yeah, mine's mainly about the plate height. And it's not that it's incompatible with the neighbors, it's just the highest plate in the neighborhood. And, 10 feet is to the base of that molding right there. And when you think about the room size that you're in, and then you're in a room size and you have a vaulted ceiling, and your wall height is basically the top of that wallpaper. I think it's disproportionate, but it's your house. And I don't think it's enough of a of an incompatibility to make you change it, if that's what you want. It's not what I would do, but I would still bring it down to like a 9-foot plate. When you have a vaulted ceiling, it's more, I think it's more in keeping with the overall proportion of the fact that you want a gable roof on the front. And so what's happening with that front window, that big front window, is the reason that it looked funny when you kept the header down lower is because you have chosen a plate height so high, and if you do a header height at a standard header height, you're going to get a massive amount of plaster above it, and that's why you raise the window. So you were raising the windows. You have an 8-foot header, and you're raising that other window to the right of the front door even higher, because an 8-foot header looks disproportionate to the wall height that you have selected. So that's why you're getting that incongruency with the amount of plaster that's above those windows. That's what's forcing all those windows higher. So just, that's why you're having that problem, in case you didn't realize it. If that's what you want, to me, it looks funny. It looks a little odd. But it's not enough for me to not approve the project.
Just to let you know, we're working with an architect, and she actually, the entrance, there's a drop ceiling at the entrance.
That's interior.
Yeah.
That doesn't-
Yeah,
No,
that's okay.
This is the outside. This is the outside.
And I'm just
above
saying
the
from
door.
our purview is the outside, and I'm just telling you what's driving your decisions is, and what's, that header height being high is a result of your decision to make the wall height that high. And so that's why that's coming up. And then I'd watch your gauge on your fascia if you're doing it in metal, because if you don't choose
Having enough
a
gauge.
gauge appropriate for it, you're going to get like a wavy look, and then it'll eventually
no,
not
that-
look good. So that's
The
a-
contractor that's doing this work has done this, we've seen examples of
Good.
how he's recommended to do it.
Thank you.
It's a
That's-
very
that's-
stout.
Those are my comments.
Sorry.
Ms. Lewis,
Sorry,
do you-
it's just, we got to keep the comments moving. We're behind schedule, so.
Yep. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, yes, for all the changes that you've made and the working with us, because, that's our goal, is to be a team together. And our goal is to balance the changes of the neighborhoods, I believe. And there's still, so I'm still somewhat struggling with, because there's so many single-story, like 800, 900 square footers in the neighborhood, but, and the ones that have changed are mostly cottage with hip roof. So, you're driving a different style, but I do believe, articulation and distinctive architectural style, if you do it right, will fit in. So I guess my comments are, yeah, I know you've worked a lot. I would still like to see colors more neutral potentially, or more woods to warm it up, and definitely, natural stone to meet the, high-quality standards for architectural finishes that we're looking for. I think, the design is as important as the size, and I feel that with your street silhouettes, thank you, that helps us to see how it fits in, and I believe it fits in, size-wise. And I agree with Don's comment on the front window, and, Mid-Century has some weird different windows, and I'm all for that, but I just, yeah, you got to think about sitting in that room with two different window head heights, and that's your choice. I'd love to see some side articulation. I love the way that you brought all the windows in more consistent, and you've really worked a lot to meet some of our recommendations, so I totally appreciate that. What else? I believe that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm generally in agreement with most of the comments from the board members. I still am struggling a bit with compatibility. I may be just the dissenting voice here in terms of being able to make a motion that this is completely compatible with the neighborhood. The windows are a different nature. The gable facing the street, although there's some, I don't think they're the majority. When I think, and I think Ms. Sherry made a good point about the plate heights. When you think about true mid-century modern, you think of what I'm thinking of I would say Escher. It's not the right name, but, pardon me? Thank you. I'm thinking of Eichler Homes. Eichler Homes have, they have an 8-foot, in some cases a 7-foot plate height, and things, they're long and narrow, and they have a very gentle roof line to them. They really kind of feel like they're flying, because they're just very horizontal in nature. And that's why they have open beam ceilings, because they do have low plate heights, and they needed the advantage of that open beam ceiling. All of a sudden, we're experiencing this craze for 10-foot ceiling heights on the inside of homes, and it's affecting the outside. And while it gives a quality that makes the homes feel bigger, this is not a small home that you're proposing. And so I do think if you're having vaulted ceilings on the inside, that you could still bring the plate height down and bring it a little bit more compatible into the neighborhood. You've done a lot of work in that area now, and I recognize that. You've also increased the pitch. I understand that that affects your ridge height. But I'm just struggling with the nature of the roof, the height of the ridge line, and I think Ms. Sherry nailed it. You're struggling with this heavy plaster element on the top where it starts to feel top heavy because you don't have those clear story windows anymore. And that would resolve itself if the plate heights came down. And being that you're demolishing, at first I thought that was being driven by the height of your garage, but that's coming down along with the house. So there's flexibility here to reduce the height of the garage or treat it in a different way where you could bring those plate heights down. So that's not a constraint you're dealing with. I think that the color scheme is generally acceptable for me. I am struggling with the treatment of the faux fireplace. I feel like if you're going to introduce something that looks like a fireplace from the outside, it needs to really look like a fireplace, which means it needs to have a chimney stack. Otherwise, we're living in some architectural sort of Disneyland that has real no basis in history or fact. And so I would encourage you to eliminate that element in its entirety or put a chimney stack on the house so that it reads like it should. Those are my comments. Would anybody care to, maybe we could take it sounds like several of the board members think that this is ready for project design approval. I would want to see an arborist report on the magnolia.
I have one more comment, actually, that
Yeah.
I thought of when you were speaking.
Yeah.
And that is, another thing that's exacerbating the height of that front elevation is the fact that you have steps going up to the front door, but your grade is still lower. So you've got over 2 feet of understory, and that's not helping that high front height.
Yeah.
And if you look at that elevation, if you pull up the exterior elevation again, if your landscape plan incorporated raising the grade, you're building a new house anyway, your foundation could incorporate a retaining wall so you could have a raised floor or grade that's higher. You could still have your front steps going up, but they could be at grade. They could be steps at grade. And then that would eliminate over 2 feet of plaster on the front of the house that would help with the compatibility issue. Because what you're trying to do is get this really high ceiling height, and then your house is raised up. So that's not helping either. So I would be more inclined to support a project design approval if you could agree to some conditions that could help us move this forward. I think everybody wants you to move forward, but we're all struggling with the height of the walls, and everybody has been since the very beginning of the project. It's been an issue, and it's kind of inched down, a little bit, so, anyway. that's
Yeah,
my
and
comment.
I think we've talked about that before. That might even be something that can be addressed through landscaping, because when you look at the flanking parcels, everything's kind of set up from the street, right? Your front yard kind of rolls up to the houses. And so that's almost something that you could even trick one's eye with landscaping, right? Something taller towards the back, shorter elements towards the front. It'll create that same roll of the eye that the natural grade would address. And I haven't looked, super close at what the proposed landscape is, and I don't think we have time to do that today, but,
We do have planters, so the plaster doesn't come all the way down. The
I think if you
plaster
pulled up the front elevation, you'll see what I'm talking about.
stops. Okay, now I don't know which direction it is.
Oh, on that same page, if you just scroll.
yeah, that's,
It's to the left of the front door.
it's basically your finished floor height down to grade there. It's about 2 feet, if I recall properly.
You've kind of got your steps floating and kind of coming off of the grade, but that's not really what's going to happen. Your grade could be raised more, or you've drawn those graphic depictions of plants on the right-hand side of those steps. You could raise it up, and see what that would do is it's going to make it a lot more human scale, that whole front elevation.
Okay, so maybe we could take a quick straw vote here. Who thinks that we could move this on for PDA if we conditioned it today? Okay, so would anybody care to take a first stab at a motion for PDA and enumerate conditions? And I should ask the applicant, so we can do that for you. We can say, we're going to give you PDA today with conditions that you will need to meet for final. Those conditions will be at our discretion. Or we can continue you indefinitely to return to us with comments that would be, in theory, related to the conditions that we would otherwise be placing on the project. So I'd like to ask you what you would prefer as applicants.
I think we prefer the contingencies or the conditions. I think we can the easiest thing is to lower the plate heights. In fact,
Or there's just a couple of other options. We can look at the steps, the elevation.
well, but no,
Okay, so we will place the conditions on the project. I'm asking you whether you would prefer to be continued today or for us to make a determination with conditions.
determination with condition.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so would anybody on the board care to take a stab at that, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve this project for project design approval with the following conditions.
Board Member
No.
Anderson, for return to full board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I need help on, I can note the conditions and then we can flow through the PDA. Is that how we should roll?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and make your motion with conditions, and we will amend as necessary, and then once we have a motion that is tight, you can reread that with the associated preservation findings. Does that sound good?
Yes, so we are making a motion to approve for project design approval with the following condition that you either reduce the plate height or raise the grade to reduce the overall height down to be more compatible with the single-story residences in the neighborhood.
I'll second that, but I have a comment about the motion that I'd like to change, if it's
Yes.
okay with the, I don't think we should leave it up to the applicant to reduce the plate height, because if you start reducing the plate height, you end up with a condition over by the garage that has to be resolved, and it changes the whole design. My condition was going to be more that you decrease the understory at the face of the building, such that the steps to the entry are at grade, and you have a more conventional 6-inch distance between the finished grade and the finished floor at the entryway to minimize the current condition of 2 foot 3 inches and minimize the amount of plaster on the front elevation.
Yeah, right, 'cause if we lower the plate height, the garage
I think we need to be very specific with our conditions if we're going to move this forward. Otherwise, I'm going to recommend that we continue this indefinitely back to the board.
That's why I made that really specific condition. I would be willing to approve on PDA with that condition, because it takes away, almost 2 feet of understory of plaster. It's not the design that I would do, but I think it's good enough to move forward at that point with that condition. But I don't think that if we're not going to get a consensus on this without talking about plate heights, I think it needs to be continued.
Okay, let's let the maker of the motion continue to make their motion, and then we will amend it after she's done. Okay? If we need to bring it in more clarity, we can do that once the motion is complete. Go ahead, please.
Well, I still think that there's an option, either A or B.
I think you've already stated that, so continue your motion, please.
Okay. I mean, that is our one condition. Excuse me? Oh, and the arborist report, yes, is number 2. Thank you. And 3 is either eliminating the fireplace or extending the chimney above the roof.
Okay. Does that complete your motion?
That completes the conditions.
Okay. So let's try to bring some clarity to condition 1 then, please. And from what I'm hearing from Ms. Sherry, as well as other board members, is that we would like to either see finished grade at the front be brought up to within or at 6 inches of finished floor height. Is that accurate, Ms. Sherry? Okay. And/or that the plate heights be reduced to a standard 8-foot plate height. Okay?
Wouldn't that change the garage height?
So you can do both, or you can do either, but there is not an option to do neither. Okay? Okay. So that would be my so I'm going to second the condition, propose that amendment. Is that acceptable verbiage?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Please complete your motion as it relates to neighborhood preservation
Can we
findings.
change the language about the fireplace? Not that they can't have a fireplace, but that the material on the exterior should either, if it looks like a fireplace in stone, needs to have a chimney that extends past, or visually not look like a fireplace. Is that the intent? They can still have a fireplace there, but it would be either plaster or another material, correct? That's the intent?
My intent in the comment that I made was that if the applicant has a desire to retain the perceived bump out
Right.
for a fireplace, that they have an associated stack above the fascia line that would reflect a typical chimney condition. So it would be 2 feet above the highest point where it meets the roof line. Okay. This has gotten very muddy, and I don't like that. So, with the information that you have, maker of the motion, would you be willing to restate your motion and the conditions based on the clarity we've tried to bring to that, and then make your neighborhood preservation findings so that a second could be made, please?
Chair Colossus, Board Member Anderson, would you like staff to try to read back the conditions?
Sure.
Okay, we'll tag team this one.
Okay, so there's definitely portions of this that I missed. But I have project design approval with comment condition to either reduce the plate height or, you started saying measurements, and that's the portion where I missed.
I think we amended the condition of approval number 1, that the finished grade should be brought up to be 6 inches within the finished floor, and/or the plate heights are reduced to the standard 8 feet.
That's correct.
Okay, and then for point 2, I have condition that an arborist report be required. Point 3, condition to eliminate the fireplace or extend the chimney above the roof.
That's correct, and the arborist report should be specifically noted for the magnolia at the rear. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
that's the motion on the table, and you can continue your motion with the necessary findings, please.
Okay, so we will move to our preservation findings. The proposed project development is consistent with the character of the city and will definitely enhance the neighborhood. It is compatible with the size, bulk, and scale as a single-story residence and addition with the neighborhood. Quality architectural materials are being used, such as Fleetwood windows, natural stone, plaster. The proposed project does not include removal of specimen trees. We're looking further into the arborist report for the magnolia to be removed in the back. The public.
Is the magnolia a special protected tree, or is it just a regular tree?
It's just a
tree.
large tree that adds to the urban forest, so we're interested in understanding what the health of that tree is before you take it out.
The public health, safety, and welfare are being protected and preserved. The project generally complies with neighborhood guidelines, privacy, landscaping, noise, and lighting to be provided in the next submittal. The development, including proposed structures, grading, preserves significant public scenic views of and from the hillside.
So I'm going to second that, and I would like to add to the conditions that any exterior lighting be included when the applicant returns to the board. So we'd be looking for a specification for the exterior lights, as well as a lighting plan that illustrates where those are located at. And I would encourage you to read the city's requirements for exterior lighting, because there's some pretty specific requirements that we have in terms of night sky compliance.
This is just lighting attached to the house, not landscape lighting?
It's landscape lighting and exterior lighting on the residence.
Under discussion?
Yes.
I think if you keep the motion the way it is and you say one or the other with the plate height, then, and they don't do anything with the headers, then you're bringing up, then they're going to come back with an 8-foot plate, and then they're going to come in with that header that's 2 feet over the front door, and that's not going to look right either. That's why I said that if you start making a motion to introduce an approval, if they reduce the plate height, it's going to change the interface of the garage with the house, and it's going to change the the proportions of the headers, so I think that's a dangerous condition. That's why I said that earlier. And I also think that, that it could be appropriate to have stone as a siding. My opinion is that it could be appropriate to have stone if somebody wanted it underneath the fascia with or without a fireplace. But again, that's just a discussion item because it was in the motion. So not to make it more difficult, Chair Collas, I just think that the header issue is, it starts to open up a can of worms.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. It's been seconded, and we're going to take a roll call. We need to move on.
Chair Collas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis,
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
No.
Motion passes.
Okay.
And are we able to capture why Board Member Sherry voted no? Is that clear, or should we have her restate for the record? If you could just restate for the record quickly why the no, please.
No. It's like I said under discussion, the same thing I said under discussion, that, yeah, normally we don't have to state the no, but it was what I said under discussion. Do you want me to
We
state
can
that
re-
again?
We can,
Okay, it's basically that if you make a condition to lower the plate height without other conditions that should go along with that are affected by the lowering of that plate height, it makes it too complicated. But I think they get it. And it's going to pass anyway, so, which is good.
Okay.
We done?
Yes. Congratulations. But
What does
did we
this
take a
mean?
roll call? Because I don't even recall, honestly. Okay, we have a roll call. The motion has passed. You received project design approval with the conditions stated. And that was an indefinite continuance to return back to our full board for final approval. And because project design approval is an appealable point in our process, there is a 10-day appeal period where a member of the public could appeal this decision. So the staff members will reach out to you. They'll let you know when that 10-day appeal period is complete. And we'll be looking forward to you coming back to the
And then we
board.
draw all these changes up and come back again and do this again?
And hopefully we give you a final approval. When you come back for final approval, please know what your finishes are going to be.
Locked in.
You cannot change a finished material after you have received final from this board unless you come back to staff or to this board with a request for revising that. So when I'm hearing from you, well, right now we think it's going to be this stone, but it could be that stone, or it might even be tile. That's an unacceptable situation for the board. We need your final material choices as part of your final packet that comes to our board for final approval. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Chair Collas, would you like a quick break, or would you like to move on? It's 4:20.
I think we've only got 2 items, and that was a difficult item, but I think we need to keep moving because the other applicants have been very patient, and I think we should get to their item.
Not our fault.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to item 2, which is 202 Salida del Sol. This is a project that's here for concept review. The proposal is to construct additions to an existing 1,565 square foot, one-story single-unit residence consisting of a 21 square foot addition to the first floor and a 456 square foot rear covered porch, a new 966 square foot partial second story, and 290 square foot second story deck. The 402 square foot 2-car garage is to remain. The proposed total of 2,954 square feet of development on a 7,968 square foot lot represents 93% of the required maximum floor to lot area ratio. The parcel is located in the appealable and non-appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone, and as currently designed qualifies for a coastal exemption. No final appealable decision may take place at this hearing. Neighborhood preservation findings will be required when you come before us for project design approval. So if you would please introduce yourself and walk us through your project, we would be very appreciative.
Hello, I am Jason Grant with J. Grant Design Studio. And so on this opening sheet here, hopefully you can see it, we are just off of Shoreline, Salida de la Sol. We're the second lot up. The blue that I've shown here represents second stories that are in our kind of general relative area. And so those are where you can see other second story houses are already in place, and then including our neighbor, which is directly or kind of right next door to us. I did the FAR study for the neighborhood, and generally, houses that have been developed to some form or another, they're in the 80s and 90s. The houses that haven't been touched, which there's quite a few of them, they're still in the 60s and 70s. And so that's kind of just the breakdown of the neighborhood. So we're going to be at 93%. Our immediate neighbor next to us is at 111, just as a comparison, essentially. So this is our little old house that sits there on the lot today. And so it's single story, garage will remain the same, the approach will remain the same. I want to zoom into this photo down here so we can see that a bit better. I think it's important. This actually describes our neighborhood quite well, this view that's right here. So you can see our neighbors that are across the street, single story, kind of typical. You can see our neighbor that's down below us, single story, and then of course our neighbor, here we are in our lot, and then our neighbor up above us. And so neighbor up above has a second story. They kind of have a deck that kind of looms down and over the top of us, clearly before architectural review. And then our neighbor below is right here, and then so their private outdoor space is obviously right here. So we took critical steps to make sure that we're not looming down or looking in upon them. Our addition, our second story addition, we're not pushing out in any way, except for the foyer in the front. So we're not getting any closer to anybody behind us or on the side. Our second story kind of just remains stacked, kind of centered up in the middle here. But I think this is a good representation to kind of see what the neighborhood looks like and what our impact will be to the most immediate neighbors. With that, again, another kind of a streetscape. So here is our lot here. Here's our neighbor up above. This is their deck that's right here. One thing to keep in note is that they're kind of I'd argue that their primary view is really more of a southwest kind of view. It looks kind of more and off at an angle as opposed to looking directly down over the top of us. Clearly they thought so because it's at a 45-degree angle there as well as their deck, and so that is the best primary view. Again, here's our neighbor down below us, and they're private. We have nice hedging. They have a beautiful hedge between us, which is nice, provides them some privacy. But again, their private outdoor space is right there. Let's see, I want to see if any of these other photos here, you can kind of see again our backyard. We're not pushing into our backyard at all. We're not getting any closer to any rear neighbors. Just essentially a second story going up. And so you can kind of see the yard space that we have, and that yard space will remain. Where this concrete patio is right now, we're proposing a covered outdoor kind of space, and just to give you kind of a visual where that will occur is right here. It will be lined up with the house, right along, and we're not pushing any closer to any neighbors. I believe the neighbor above believed that we were putting a barbecue kind of over in this area. You'll hear some comments to that effect, and that's just not the case. It will be lined up with the house, not getting any closer to any of the neighbors. So here is our just overall site plan, where you can see our neighbor, again, our neighbor up above, their deck location, the existing residence where it sits now, our open outdoor spaces, landscaping will remain in the spots that it is. Again, this is where that large concrete patio is now, and that's where our covered porch area will go. Here's our downhill neighbor, and here's their private outdoor space. And so keep in mind that when we do the addition, or I'll show you in just a few pages, that we've kind of kept everything notched over and away from them and not looming over the top of them. This represents the existing house as it looks right now, and then I'll just zoom in on this real quick to show you The dark blue is where the foyer, we're going to pop out to kind of create a better sense of entry. This hatch that's here represents where the second story is occurring. You can see these dimensions where we're keeping good distances off the property line. So no closer than 9.6 than 11.2, and then I believe that's a 15 or 13.6. On this side here, we already have a pretty good separation from our uphill neighbor. We're at 12.11 and not getting any closer. This represents our outdoor deck, and so we're maintaining 18, we're kind of burying it in the center of the whole property, not looming over or on top of anybody. So we're 18 feet away from the property line, and we're 38 feet from the rear. And so I think people have concerns anytime you hear a deck on the second floor, is that going to be, impending on our privacy? We've made a conscious effort to keep everything kind of very centered and not looming over the top of anybody else. And here is our proposed plan. We have a new foyer. We kind of pushed that out just slightly. It's only 18 square feet, a set of stairs that carry us up, a powder, one big great room, new kitchen, a set of doors that open out. Here's our covered outdoor space, which is kind of adjacent to the kitchen space. You can kind of come in and out. Here's that barbecue that's built in, again, keeping in that same line, not getting any closer to the neighbors. Second floor, we get a master, we get the deck area, and then we get one more bedroom that's over the top of the garage, and we're set back 12 feet from where the leading edge of the garage is right now. And then again, made sure that we kind of kept it into the interior, step back from the sides and letting the roof just kind of come up and catch the sides. And then simple sections, so plate heights are always a concern. So our first plate, we're at 9.6 with 8-foot heads, and then second floor, we're at 6.8 with 6.8 header and 8.0 plate. So it is getting a little bit taller, but our overall height is only 22.6, and so we've kind of quite intentionally kept the massing on the second floor very narrow so our roof lines don't get too high. And so I think we've accomplished that well. So as seen from the street, you can see our neighbor who's up above. This represents their deck and kind of their upper story. These lots all kind of naturally step down and work their way down. And so garage is here. Here's our second story above that garage, which is 12 feet back. Here's our new entryway. Here's a staircase carrying us up. And then again, we kept this massing is all a minimum of like 6 feet back from where the front of the house is now. And so it allows the roof to kind of go up and kind of hide that architecture, kind of bury it in there a little bit. As seen from the rear, here's our outdoor deck area. Right below, we have a series of doors which I'll open out. Here's our covered porch with our outdoor barbecue area. Here's our master bedroom. And again, here's our neighbor who's down below us. Again, burying the deck, keeping it in the roof line, stepping back the house to try to maintain privacy for them as best we can. And then as seen from side to side, so looking north towards our neighbor, towards the deck, it's stark, but we didn't really want to have any windows. Their deck kind of runs along this whole area. And so we have one window that's just in a water closet. And then this is the rest of the architecture stepping away, of course, the addition far beyond over the top of the garage. This is our covered porch area here. This allows us to take this roof and kind of carry it along here and carry it over this door here. And then looking down towards our neighbors on the downhill side, again, this is where we kind of intentionally stepped everything back. We have one window here, this window that's in this location, which is looking their direction. It kind of looks over their driveway and their garage as opposed to their yard. This window is at the end of the hall, and then this is the master addition, which is far beyond us on the other side, essentially. And then with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Would anybody like to start with questions? Oh, I'm sorry, it's public comment time. Okay, so at this time, we will open up public comment for this item only to both those who are in the gallery and present, as well as those online. And I'm going to ask Ms. Johnston to please woman that process.
Thank you, Chair Glass. I'll go ahead and start with in-person public comment. At this time, I do have 2 requests to speak, so I'll go ahead and start with Tiffany Holler. If you can make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
You can just make sure that the microphone is on, state your name for the record, and if you are a neighbor, it would be helpful to know where you
Sure.
live.
Okay, I think it's on, yes. I'm Tiffany Haller. We live actually at 209 Salida del Sol. So across the street, it was referenced that we have a two-story addition. We didn't build that, but it's tucked in the very back of our home, so you don't even see it. Most people don't even know from the front of our house that there is a second story. When I wanted to comment before in the beginning of this meeting, what I wanted to comment on was basically a couple things. One, being on the street and watching a house be torn to the ground today, that we were never notified, not one single neighbor, except for the neighbor adjacent, and that was 214 Salida del Sol. So all of us neighbors have gone down to the actual city to find out why we never were notified of this house being built. I believe that the height is 20 feet. I'm not quite sure, but that was why I'm here today. There's, I believe, something called Good Neighbor Guidelines, where we're supposed to be alerted by the actual owner of the property before any of this happens. We don't want to be in this situation. We have new neighbors moving into our neighborhood, and, just a simple, hey, we're going to build this house, not to have fences put up and a porta potty, and never heard anything other than the yellow sign in the front yard. I'm wondering if there was, on that project, an affidavit of noticing, maybe homes adjacent should be sent certified letters. So, because we never received, we were told that there were 2 postcards. Not one of us, except for the neighbor next door, were noticed, okay? We couldn't have missed 2 blue cards, not all of us. Neighborhood compatibility we talk about. A simple drive around the Mesa, you can see there's a lot of not compatible properties. I don't want to talk necessarily about this project, but it is a large home. And a lot of homes on Shoreline are reminiscent of that too. I think it would definitely be a nice thing for the Mesa, tactfully done, but I think that we need to go back to having a good neighbor policy and really hammering that home, because we don't know, other than yellow signs, there's nobody that's been talking to us about any of these projects. So I just want to bring that to your attention. And then I think that's it.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for coming out today. I'm going to let the public comment continue, and then I will have a question for staff about that.
All right, I have one more speaker slip. So up next, we have Paul Catheter. If you would like to make your way up to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon. I'm Paul Catheter. I live directly to the east on the backside of 202. I sent a letter to y'all. I'm not too sure if you've been able to see it, just sort of outlining my overall concerns, broadly supportive of the project. And by the way, kudos to Jason. I have the same floor plan as you, as 202 Salida del Sol, so certainly like what they're doing. The big concerns I had, and when I sent the letter, I hadn't spoken with Jason or the owners about it. I have since then. What I laid out really on the privacy side is just, are those east windows going to be looking directly into my master bedroom, which I don't think they want, nor did I want. So I've spoken with both Jason and the owners, and I think they're both amenable to figuring out some solution, whether it's mature hedging or what have you, to try to block that off. So, with that, I'd be very happy about this project. And then the other one was just general noise. We talked about putting a wall along like a solid wall along the fence, and they seemed amenable to that as well. And I think if they are amenable to that, broadly supportive of the project. So with that, I didn't even use my 2 minutes. How about that? If you have any questions for me, I'm always happy to answer.
Can you remind us of your address, please,
Yeah,
for the
it's
record?
1655 Santa Rosa Avenue. So if you look at the site plan, which Jason can pull up, it's basically on the other side of the really attractive power lines that
Yeah,
are on the back
we
of
did
our-
receive your
Yeah,
public comment letter.
If you can do anything about burying those lines, I will be forever in your debt, so.
Thank you very
Awesome, thank
much.
you.
Hi, my name's Thomas Martinelli. I live at 1660 Shoreline Drive, just below where this development's going to be done. Live there with my wife. We've gotten a notice in the mail, and we got notice from the owners the day after the sign went up. They were kind of surprised the sign went up as soon as it did. They weren't aware of that. They did send us a letter explaining the project and introduced us to Mr. Grant, who we met with today, went over the entire project, and we're in favor of the project going on. They've done everything they can do to protect our privacy. I think it'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood, and so we're in favor of the project.
Thank you for coming out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that is all the speaker slips I have. And I don't see anyone else moving to speak, so I'll go ahead and move to virtual public comment. If you wish to speak on Zoom at this time, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. I do see one hand raised on Zoom for Ann Shore-Jachtel, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the ability to talk and you can unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted? I'm so sorry. This is all new.
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, perfect. So my name is Ann Shore-Jachtel, and as Jason Grant has noted, I live right next door at what he deemed before the Coastal Commission second-story deck went up. So I live right next door to the Quinns. They're at 202, I'm at 204. And also I've written a letter to the board, which you may not have seen so far, but I wanted to speak in person to kind of iterate what my concerns were regarding the building plans, okay? So let me preface my remarks by saying that I very much want the Quinns to be happy with the house they build, right? And to integrate into the neighborhood that they have expressed such enthusiasm for. We are indeed a great neighborhood, and we are all good neighbors who watch out for each other and care about each other. That's a given. However, I have some very real concerns about the building plans, okay, that I just wanted to clarify in the forum. And let me start by saying Jason Grant has gone over the plans with me, very graciously spending his time to do so, okay? But I still want to at least be able to voice what I feel needs to be heard. So as you can see, I also sent a second email that had the images of my view that go right over the top of the 202 roof. Did you guys get those?
Yes, we did, and I just want to remind you, you have 2 minutes, so I would encourage you to get to your bullet points as quickly as possible so you can get through those.
Okay. So the second story, I know no matter what second story goes up, the view is going to be blocked, but I is just encouraging, as where possible, the use of a hip roof as opposed to a gable roof, just to lower the pitch and minimize that blockage of my view. Number two, it also concerns the noise. And in the 64 years since my parents bought that house, I was born and raised in that home, I have never been in a situation where Airbnb renters have been so inconsiderate and so loud that I even had to think about the idea of noise. So my proposal, of course, which is most likely unfeasible and not functional with the rest of the Quinn's plans, and I get that, was to move their covered terrace area more towards the shoreline side so the noise could kind of the natural cars could absorb the noise of the backyard. That may not be an option. I get that. But I am worried and would very much appreciate it if the Quinns and or Jason could reach out and propose some measure of noise reduction to address this issue. The Airbnb renters have knocked us all as neighbors on our proverbial behinds, and we have never experienced anything like that, especially me. I'm right next door. So perhaps to address the idea of some measure of noise reduction in the form of an acoustic wall or other solution for the fence line that divides our properties, okay? And my last comment is just about the downstairs plate height. I know what's proposed is 9.6.
Ms. Jachtel, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, and just to maybe reconsider that to keep the conformity with the rest of the neighborhood. Other than that, thank you, Jason, for going over the plans with me. And if the Quinns could reach out, it would be very much appreciated because they've done so, but only after the fact.
Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, I don't see any other hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive several letters from Ann Shore Jactal, Paul and Susan Catheter, Jonathan Standring, George Leah Leo, and Kyle Richardson. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Kalas.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that will complete public comment for this item, and we will move on to questions from the board. Would anybody like to start?
One quick question, but the plate height for the first floor, that is existing, correct? The 9.6?
No, it's currently at 8, and we'd be
Oh, got
raising
it.
it up to 9.6.
Okay, thanks.
Could you go back to the site plan, please?
Yeah.
So we have that for reference. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
I do.
Okay, Ms. Anderson.
So what architectural style are you heading for with your redo?
Well, I'll use the term traditional for lack of a better term, and the reason I say that is because we're going to have horizontal siding, extended sill, wide trim around the windows. It'll all be clad exterior, wood frame casement windows, except for the sliders that we have towards the back. Those will function a little differently. So the materiality, just the simplicity of the overall design, I really would call it traditional more than anything else.
Okay, and your horizontal siding you're thinking of is a what product? Or have you gotten there yet? or
We have
colors?
a
Okay, all right.
horizontal siding of some kind. It's not going to be a shaker or a lot of the stuff that you see along shoreline itself. We're going more of a traditional, in that sense, kind of a different material.
Okay, all right. Did you obtain a survey with finished floors or your site sections and your, I believe you had some comparisons from the adjacent properties in
Yeah, so
regards
that
to
it's
finished
not
floors?
not a survey. Those are just measurements taken on site. There's an existing wall there, so we measured that wall. And then a lot of this is taken from aerial kind of overlay and data that we had related to the site. So not an official survey.
Okay, so can you explain then the second story to the left is 5 feet higher, yours drops down 5 feet, and the shoreline residence drops down another X?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So I'd say it's about a 5-foot drop down from the neighbor above us. And I'll say it's roughly a 5, I mean, let me just show you it kind of transitions out towards the front. It's a bit higher, and then I think that it transitions to a bit less. Let me show you that photograph right here. So this is a great example of what the neighborhood does. Here's that wall, and it's 3 feet, and plus it kind of grade goes up. Here's our situation, and go ahead and I'll grant you 4 feet or so right there, and then this kind of transitions back, and I assume into nothing. There's a step down, but there's not. The aerial that I have, it shows spot elevations of kind of each site as it works its way down. But it's not a survey. So there's kind of that step down, and again step down.
Okay, and then you're replacing all the roof with
Correct.
okay, dimensional shingle, asphalt shingle or something?
An
You haven't
asphalt
got
shingle,
there.
a high-quality asphalt shingle, something with a bit more profile to it, but it'll be something nice.
And I didn't see a slope on your roof plan.
I
What?
think it's a 4 and 12. I think it's on the section, if I remember correctly.
Okay, 4 and 12, thank
Yeah.
you. And then, I mean, the only, bedroom 3 window, but you stated that was over the driveway, so. Yeah.
Exactly
it's
right.
Not necessarily a concern for privacy.
Yeah, so that window if the addition was here, it's kind of this direction right here. This is their driveway in. And then, again, this is where we made sure not to be putting any windows or be layering over the top of that space there. So, yes, that window is right there, kind of looking this direction.
And then the master bedroom windows are so far set back, 40 feet.
Exactly
Yeah.
right. We're kind of all the way on the opposite side essentially. So those master bedroom windows are here. But Paul, who got up and spoke, he's right. He's living back here. And so his concern was related to, and I'll show you, was related to these windows that are right here. And so,
Right.
and so we're a good distance away. The conversation that we had today is, you know, what I'd like to try to do is mitigate privacy with some hedging or something other, you know, combination of a wall and hedging. And I know that's a subject, but something that we could agree on. Here's hedging that's maintained at 8 feet or whatever the magic number is, where we maintain privacy for him and for us as well. Again, this hedge right here is a blessing in terms of how healthy it is and how wide it is. It's one of the nicest effects. And so this property just doesn't have much landscaping along the perimeter right now. It has a few citrus trees and whatnot. And then particularly against Ann's house, who just spoke, there's really nothing. I mean, when I first went there, my first thought was, wow, it'd really be nice to have some kind of foliage to kind of separate us from you and vice versa. It's hard. I mean, I will say, just quite honestly, if somebody's standing at the deck, that's a very tough angle, you know, to try to hedge yourself out of. And of course, when you have a neighbor who's up above, especially along the mesa, they're like, well, don't block my views by your hedging. And so it's that balancing act, right, of course. And so I'd love to see some more planting go in here, something that kind of creates a little bit of separation. I think that would be nice. And quite frankly, because of this location of this deck, it's a big reason why we looked at trellises, we looked at other things in terms of that outdoor space, but it's there, literally it's right there and on top. And when I met with Ann, and I thought we had a good meeting, I won't speak, well, one thing that was conveyed is like, actually, the roof form might actually be a good way to kind of block sound when people are out there. It'll act in a sense as a way to make sure that, you know, if you're not staring right down at somebody and hearing everything that's going on when they're on that, using that outdoor space. And so the comment was that overall the roof was probably a good way to kind of maintain privacy both directions in a sense.
Oh, and you have some wall there too, I thought from your plans, but not a concern, but thank you. And are you proposing the glass rail on that upper
Yeah,
deck?
it is a glass rail, but to kind of keep a traditional look as opposed to it being this real modern straight edge thing, is I'd like to picture frame it in, so we'll have standard posts, a big wide cap on top, and the glass will be kind of pictured, so that way you kind of maintain a shadow line in there, and it doesn't just look like this stark kind of piece of glass that's in there. But yes, originally I had pickets and for maintenance reasons and whatnot. The owner asked if we could do a glass, and so that's where we're at.
And that's a large deck that we, you know, typically scrutinize something over 250 square feet. So, I mean, I'm assuming it's a master deck. Can you elaborate on why it's the size that it is, or what the potential use of the deck is?
Well, decks can be used for all types of things. If you think I'm going to tell you we're having margarita parties up there, I'm not going to say that. But no, it's off the master. It makes none of the rooms upstairs are actually are very large. And so again, it's just an extension of the master. We have a set of French doors that step out onto there. The set of doors that you see here is just along the hallway there. And so, me being romantic as I am, I like the idea of these doors being able to open, have natural air that's in that space. And so, and again, really we did, you know, work very diligently at maintaining, keeping that deck in the very center of everything.
I appreciate that. And then, and you're close to the 15 feet, which we like to see on the interior setback sides on both of your second floors, close. But you didn't bring any 3D perspectives for us. And so, I mean, the 2Ds are difficult to, you know, I mean, they look a lot more massive than the three-dimensional view would potentially look. So would like to see that in your next submittal to help us with the 93 FAR. So I guess that might be a comment, but that'll finish my questions. Thank you.
Chair Kawas, board members, if I can just, on that note, I should have mentioned this earlier, but the applicant is interested in waiving the remaining FAR supplemental requirements, so if you can all take that into consideration, and I can pull those up if there's questions on that.
Okay, and I just want to note for the record that I have not forgotten the question I need to ask staff about the public comment. I was remiss in doing that at the outset of the item, but I have not forgotten, and I will get to that. Thank you, Ms. Garson. Okay, anybody else with any questions? Okay, I have a couple questions. So typically, we try to shoot for an 85% guideline relative to Florida lot area ratio. You're over that. You have identified some second floor structures in I'll call it the general area, although I wouldn't necessarily say it's in the neighborhood, because I think some of those are further east than I would really define the neighborhood as, and it might be important that we do define the neighborhood. Some of those, based on my drive around, are, I'll call them diminutive or more modest second floors. So while they do have a second floor element, I wouldn't necessarily put them in the same category as what you're proposing, just because this is almost a full second floor. Can you speak a little bit to the 93%? I don't have as much of an issue with the percentages I am seeing as sort of the massiveness and sort of how this is feeling from a massing standpoint. Could you talk to what drove that and or why we might not be seeing more step back at the second floor level on the north side of the residence?
Yeah, so one, to the comment that was just made about massing models and looking at 3D. So of course it's tough to look at a flat elevation like you're standing on a 20-foot ladder and you're looking straight at a house without getting any kind of perspective of what it would be. So yes, we all shoot for the 85 and it's a beautiful number. But we have a program and we're attempting to get some spaces that are going to meet the client's needs. And so we ended up at 93, and so that's where we are. On the north-hand side, that's where we have the widest separation between us and the neighbor. And so on that southern side, where it's a typical 6-foot offset, and the house just happens to be set on that. So we're 11 feet something to the property line to that immediate neighbor. And so where I stacked it and where you see that one portion coming up that everybody's got their eyeballs on and why isn't that brought over slightly, is at the spot where we actually have the most separation between the most immediate neighbor. And so we worked diligently at bringing in those sides, and again, I think maybe a massing model would be helpful in this situation, because you're just, again, this is like standing on a 20-foot ladder looking straight at a house from an angle you'll never see. And I also don't think it's appreciated on the west elevation where we're looking at the front. That 6-foot setback, those roofs that are going to carry up, that separation between those masses, and so I think that gets picked up in a model, better, and so to allow to kind of show you that separation and how that massing sits back, and it's really just not this vertical thing. We in my opinion, we have kind of this beautiful breakup of forms, and they kind of slowly kind of step back, creating these beautiful kind of shadow lines, and and so I think we've done a good job on that. So I don't know, that's my 2 cents on that.
Okay. That was my only immediate question. Any other questions? No. Okay, so before we move on to comments, I would like to ask staff to address the public commenters' concern. I believe it was Tiffany, in regards to Tiffany Holler, I think that was the last name, in regards to the item at 214 Salida del Sol. Do we know what happened there? Because today I drove out to take a look at this, and I also saw the house being demolished, and I saw several neighbors out there kind of jaw dropped, taking pictures like what is going on in our neighborhood. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Chair Colossus, board members, I did, just for the record, I gave my contact information for the neighbor so we can discuss offline regarding the project that's not scheduled on today's agenda. but it looks like 214 Salida del Sol, at least during the planning phase, it did come before the SFDB. I can't speak to the demolition, so I can look into that, but it would have been noticed for initial concept hearing and the project design approval hearing at SFDB.
Okay. And that project received final approval through our board?
Yes, received consent final approval, it looks like, November 7, 2022.
Okay. So, Ms. Holler, I would encourage you to communicate with staff and find out to a greater degree what happened there from a noticing standpoint.
We have gone down. There's a difference in when hearings were happening and when the notices went out. There's a little discrepancy there. My neighbor here lives next door and is going to be looking into their yard.
Okay, so that's not something we're in charge of in terms of the noticing. I can understand how that would have been very disconcerting to you. Clearly, you should have been noticed if you are that close of a proximate neighbor. And so I would just encourage you to continue that dialogue with staff. And I'm sorry that that's happened. Okay, so we will move on to comments. Does anybody have comments in regards to this item? Not 214, but the one before us today.
I have a couple.
Okay, Ms. Sherry.
I am also okay waiving the supplemental requirements that are normally required for projects over 85% FAR, and it's because I'm of the opinion that the addition and the renovation is of quality, design, and materiality. And I want to thank the applicant for addressing privacy concerns of all of the neighbors. And I think it's a really nice project. And I don't really have any additional comments. If I'm looking for something, when you get to DD, you might want to look at that peak at the front where the garage meets the vertical wall at that window for flashing. Little things like that. But I think overall, it's going to be a nice project, and I appreciate the extent that you've done to think about a lot of things.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'll go.
Ms. Lewis?
I agree that it's a really nice project, and I want to applaud you for the conversations you've had with the neighbors and working through the different privacy concerns and noise. And I think that it meets the design intent and the guidelines for second stories, stepping back and maintaining that single-story ridge line across the front. I do think there's room on the second story to come in a little bit, but I think that I'd be in support of waiving the additional FAR requirements in place of having some sort of 3D perspectives of that first street elevation, and trying to understand the bulk up on the second story. I think overall the plate heights are good. I think it fits, with the stepping that happens along the street, I think also helps, and it keeps it in line with the other neighbors without being too large. And I think on the FAR study and looking at the second stories are coming. And so I think you're doing a good job of trying to set it inside on the footprint of the building. Those are my main comments.
Okay. Ms. Graffitti, do you have any comments?
Yes, overall, I think it's a great project. Also appreciate the engagement with the neighbors and hope that dialogue can continue. I agree that I like the way the second story is set back from the street, but I would like to see potentially bringing in a little bit from the sides, especially I think you said on the northerly side, but on the left side, maybe you're right in that in 3D, that will be resolved. To me, it does seem a little bit boxy on the second story, just in the bulk and wanting to make sure we can find or make that finding. Outside of that, like I said, I think it's a great project.
Ms. Anderson?
Yes, I agree too with that's been said well. Nice work. Yeah, I definitely want to see a perspective, so that's a component of, I mean, not being able to totally waive the requirements, because it does look very boxy from, what we're seeing in the 2 dimensions here. And if there is a way to consider a 9-foot plate and, appease that uphill neighbor, to reduce it down so that, because you're so close there, in a compromise that would help bring that, it really reads as a full second story. And most of the Mesa neighborhood, to me, has a lot more stepping in all the way around. So in order to justify the neighborhood compatibility and the 93% FAR, if there's some reduction that can be made and compromise, I think we're going to have a win-win. What else? Yeah, everything else has been said.
I like the fact that you've incorporated the hip roof to the upper level. I think that's great. And that you've made a concerted effort to keep that upper deck internal, sort of to the footprint of the home. I think the step back from the Front Street elevation is a positive thing, which everybody's pretty much noted, as well as on the south elevation. I am concerned about the proportion of the window on the second floor above the garage. It's just, yeah, you're gonna have a flashing issue, et cetera there. I think that just needs to be looked at more closely. I think there's an opportunity to look at the second floor master wing and perhaps reduce the size of your deck that's on the east side and reconfigure that area in a way that would allow you to step back the second floor on the north side. And I would highly encourage that. I think that would also result in a reduced FAR, and that's not really the goal. The goal is more a matter of relief from that side yard. I honestly don't know if you have a wall or what it looks like you have a wall or something that's coming out in an easterly direction on the north side of the covered patio on the first floor. I don't know if that's in fact the case or if I'm just seeing a column there. But I think anything that you can do there to further abate acoustical concerns with it sounds like several of your neighbors. The roof is great, but sometimes things like roofs and fences or walls can actually create a drum-like effect, and so you may want to talk to an acoustician about how to dampen some of the acoustical noise that's coming off of the property. And it seems to be, if this is going to continue to be rented in the same vein that it is currently, I think that's an important thing to do
For the record, it won't.
for neighbor relations. I'm not a fan of the glass guardrails. I never am. So I would like to see something more traditional for guardrails, but I understand that that's on the back side of the residence, so there's some flexibility there. I would be in favor of the 9-foot plate height that Ms. Anderson has mentioned. And I think if you were to return to us with a revised proposal that did address some of the concerns I've mentioned, that I would be willing to waive the supplemental application material. But I'm reluctant to provide that relief at this juncture without us seeing some good faith in regards to the things that we've asked for.
Understood.
So those are my comments. Would anybody like to make a motion? Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that this project be continued back to the full board for further concept review with the comments that the board is generally in favor of the project and is willing to waive the supplemental materials related to the floor area ratio percentage, provided that the applicant further study and address some of our comments. Comments being, we would like to see further relief on the second floor from the northerly property line. We would encourage the applicant to restudy the configuration of the second floor master area and deck in order to accomplish that. We would recommend a study of the proportions of the window on the westerly elevation above the garage at the second floor level. We appreciate the applicant's efforts to reach out to neighbors and to address privacy and acoustical concerns. We would encourage them to consider consulting with an acoustician in terms of any walls or proposed architectural elements that would be used to dampen noise that would be emanating from the parcel. We would like to see a 9-foot plate height on the first floor as opposed to that which is proposed currently. We are generally in favor of the architectural style and the materials that are being proposed. That's my motion.
Second?
Do you have an item under discussion?
I have an under discussion item.
Okay.
Can you repeat the comment about the acoustical engineer? Was that just a suggestion?
Yes, it was a recommendation to consult
Okay.
with one.
And it was because of the potential for noise from an Airbnb in the backyard of a house?
What I've heard from the neighbors is that there's a lot of noise emanating off the property, and I've heard that there's some discussions going on between the applicant and the neighbors about the possibility of putting a wall in. And in my experience, it depends on how that wall is built, whether it will exacerbate or dampen the noise. That's why I made that recommendation.
Just so I can just, for everybody's clarity, so currently it's Airbnb while we're going through the design review process. The owners are renting a house. This will be their forever home, so it's a husband and wife with one small kid. So the need for, we'll dampen as a good, but we're not going to have these high volume problems.
I appreciate that. I'm not attempting to address the use of the residence. I'm just trying to address the privacy and acoustical concerns.
Got it.
I would like to add or modify to your item number 1, the three-dimensional rendering to help with the decision around the FAR.
Okay, so I would like to amend my motion that we would like to see a 3D rendering of the project.
Even with reduced FAR? Just so we're clear, I understand if I came back with this, I would need, but say I go back and we have a miracle meeting with the owners and we go, oh, we got ourselves to 80 8. Does that, I'm asking, I'm just for clarity.
Well, let's take a straw vote. Who thinks if they come in at 85, 88, and they pull in the north wall, who thinks that we still need a rendering? Okay, I see no one raising their hand, so I think you have your answer.
Got it.
I would like to call out, though, I think this is obvious, but just the reduction in FAR, again, around the portions of the home that we mentioned on the perimeter.
I got, yeah,
Right.
that's clear. I
Okay,
understand that.
just want to make sure that's in the record.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not going to add that to the motion, so the motion's been made, it's been seconded. If we could have a roll call, please.
Chair Kalas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Graffitti,
Yes.
Board Member Lewis.
Yes.
Board Member Sherry.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you all, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, we will adjourn the meeting for the Single Family Design Board of September 25th, 2023. Thank you. Have a good evening.